Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and we are continuing on in our playlist and our series of the Ultimate March Madness Tournament. This is the 5th video now in the series already. If you haven't gone and watched the beginning of the series, I please encourage you to do so. There is a link in the description to the first video in the series. This is the Ultimate March Madness Tournament. And here we're going to continue down looking at each region and what team's going to come out of each region to eventually mark a champion of the Ultimate March Madness Tournament. Thus far, we have had 3 regions we've completed, with SMU, Boston College, and Alabama all advancing to the final 16 in our Ultimate Tournament. We now go to Greensboro, North Carolina to see the Southeast region played out in this video. So let's look at the teams in the Southeast region. Our number 1 seed is the Tar Heels of North Carolina, a 29-7 record, first in the ACC. We'll see if they can put their dominance to this region and make another number 1 seed go on to the final 16. They will wait for a play-in game between the Denver Pioneers and the South Alabama Jaguars. The Pioneers come out of the Summit League with a 17-17 record. We'll see what they can do versus a Sun Belt team with a 16-16 record. 2 500 teams going at it to move on in this tournament. Then we continue down, and our 9 seed is the Hilltoppers from Western Kentucky, 3rd out of the Conference USA with a 22-12 record. They are the league champions after beating UTEP in the Conference USA Finals. We will see them in that 9 spot, a challenging opponent potentially against the Wildcats of Davidson. 15-17 record, not so great in the Atlantic 10, but we'll see what they can do in this new format. Up next, we see in the 5th slot, Appalachian State, the Mountaineers, 16-2 record coming out of the Sun Belt. And we see a first in their league. Unfortunately, they lost out to Arkansas State in their region, but we will see if they can have a redemption coming into this tournament. They are awaiting a playoff game between the Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions and the Wofford Terriers. The Golden Lions, coming out of the SWAC region, did not qualify for the conference tournament, but now they have an opportunity to show what they can do in a tournament-style format. Up against Wofford, coming out of the Southern Conference, 6th in their league. We'll see what they can do, giving an opportunity in this tournament. Then we see another play-in game for the 13 seed is the Leopards from Lafayette out of the Patriot League, 3rd from the Patriot League with a 10-8 record in their league, going up against the Harvard Crimson, an Ivy League team that just missed out on their conference tournament. Ivy League teams always seem to be strong in tournaments like this, so we'll see what they can do. In the 4th slot, we then see the Bradley Braves out of the Missouri Valley Conference, 3rd in the MVC, only losing out to number 2 Drake in the semifinals of their tournament. We'll see if they can put their stamp in the Southeast region. We now look to the bottom of the bracket. And first off, we see in the 3rd slot, the Florida Atlantic Owls, one of the big stories out of last year's tournament. This year, still a strong year, 25-9 record, which put them 2nd in the American Athletic Conference. We'll see what they can do to put their stamp on this tournament. And they are awaiting a 14th seed play-in, which is the Chicago State Cougars, one of the only teams in Division I basketball who has an independent that is not part of any conference, with a 13-19 record up against the Gamecocks from Jacksonville State, a 14-18 record out of the Conference USA. We see another play-in round at the 11th spot between the Buffalo Bills Buffalo Bulls, my bad, and the UC Davis Aggies. Buffalo Bulls did not have a great year, only 4-27 in the MAC conference. They'll have a tough battle against UC Davis. The Aggies, 20-13 record out of the Big West, third in that conference. We see them and the winner of that game going up against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, 19-15 out of the Big 10, ninth in their league. We'll see what they can do to put a stamp on this tournament and see where they can go in that sixth slot. Then we see a 7 seed. We see Santa Clara, the Broncos, coming out of the West Coast Conference, fourth in their league. We'll see what they can do going up against a play-in round between the Mississippi Valley Delta Devils and the Wright State Raiders. The Delta Devils are the lowest ranked team when we look at net rankings, as they only won one game out of 31, a 1-30 record in the entire year. Can they make a redemption arc here and make an impact in a tournament like this? Up against the Wright State Raiders out of the Horizon League, fourth in that league with a 13-7 record. We'll see what they can do there. Finally, we're down to the last matchups of a play-in, where we see in the 15th spot the Presbyterian Blue Hose out of the Big South Conference up against the Kansas City Roos, a 10-6 out of the Summit Conference, second in their league. Just were upset in their conference tournament. We'll see what those two teams can do, as they will eventually go up against the Colorado Buffaloes out of the Pac-12. 26-11 record, third best in that league, and lost out to Oregon in their conference tournament. So that's a look at our bracket for the Southeast region. We will go one at a time through each game if you want to, and I haven't given the time to do this last time, but put your predictions down in the comments below. Who is your favorite to come out of this, or who is your big story that would be an awesome upset to come out of this region and make a splash into this tournament? So we'll start going up at the top. Put your comments in below, and we will start with Denver versus South Alabama. And to start off, we do have a close game between these two teams. Back and forth with South Alabama having the lead early and lots of lead changes, but Denver did pull away and eventually got the 9-point victory to move on to the next round. And we see Denver will then await their battle against the number 1 seed, North Carolina. But we'll continue as we see Arkansas Pine Bluff and the Golden Lions going up against the Terriers from Wofford. And it is Wofford that get the victory here. A close game through most of the first half, but Wofford ended up taking the lead in the second half and was able to maintain that all the way for a first round win. So we will see now Wofford awaiting their matchup against Appalachian State. But for now, we will move on to looking at the Leopards from Lafayette up against Harvard. And it is the Crimson of Harvard, the Harvard Crimson, that get a commanding lead and maintain that all the way to a very clear victory against the Leopards as Harvard moves on to the next round. And as we see, Harvard is now lined up to play Bradley in the next round. Next matchup we will see is the Cougars from Chicago State up against the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. And it is the independent team, the Chicago State Cougars, that get the win. Back and forth game in the first half, but Chicago State got a good lead and maintained that and pushed it all the way for a fine win to move on to the next round. And we see that Chicago State awaits a matchup against the Owls from Florida Atlantic. Our next matchup, we will see the Bulls from Buffalo up against the UC Davis Aggies. And it is the team from the MAC Conference, the Buffalo Bulls, that get the victory here. They take the lead and never look back, maintaining that lead all the way for a fine first-round victory. And now Buffalo awaits their matchup against the Golden Gophers from the University of Minnesota. Next up, we see the Delta Devils from Mississippi Valley up against the Wright State Raiders. And it is the Raiders from Wright State that get the victory here. Even though there was a good close matchup, it was Wright State's game as we got into the first half. They maintained that away to a 31-point victory. And we see that Wright State will now await their matchup against the Broncos from Santa Clara. Our last play-in game is Presbyterian up against the Roos from Kansas City. And the closest matchup so far in this bracket goes to the Roos from Missouri, Kansas City. As you see, lots of lead changes back and forth, and all the way down to the wire. It was tied at 61 until Kansas City could get the final points and the first round victory. What a good matchup for play-in round. And we see the Roos from Kansas City awaiting their matchup against the Colorado Buffaloes. And now we see a look at all 16 teams that are remaining in this region. And we'll go one by one to see who will make it on to the quarterfinals. Starting with the Tar Heels of North Carolina up against the Denver Pioneers. And as we can see here, the Tar Heels take care of the Pioneers fairly handily, building a big lead and then going all the way for a comfortable win to move on to the regional quarterfinals. Next, to see who will face the Tar Heels will be the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky versus the Davidson Wildcats. And in a close one, it is the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers that get the victory. They had a decent lead going in the first half, but Davidson did well to make it tight, and after a few lead changes, it is the Hilltoppers that come away with the victory to move on to the regional quarterfinals. Next, we see the Appalachian State Mountaineers going up against the Terriers from Wofford. And in our first major upset of this region, we see the Terriers coming away with a marginal 1-point victory to close it out. A lot of lead changes back and forth, and you can see Wofford got up to a 3-point lead. Appalachian State got it down to 1, but could not break that barrier as Wofford walk away with a tight 1-point victory to cause an upset in this region. And we see a 12-seed Wofford moving on to the next round, awaiting their matchup between either the Harvard Crimson or the Bradley Braves. And in a pretty close matchup, we do have the Braves from Bradley moving on. They were leading nearly the entire game, but Harvard did well to keep it close all the way to the end, as it's just a narrow 6-point victory to move on to the next round. So we see the first two quarterfinals set and ready to go. Now we continue down to the bottom half, where we're going to see Florida Atlantic going up against the Cougars from Chicago State. And what most people probably expected, Florida Atlantic went home with a commanding victory. Never in doubt that they would not take home this win, moving on to the next round. Now, Florida Atlantic awaits their next matchup, which will be either against the Bulls from the University of Buffalo or the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And as you can see, it is the Golden Gophers that move on to the next round. They took a lead and maintained that lead all the way to a 14-point victory. With 3 quarterfinals set, We are then now moving further down to see the Broncos from Santa Clara going up against Wright State. And it is Wright State that moves on from this matchup. Santa Clara had a massive lead, about 15 points. It's hard for me to see that type in 14 points perhaps. But it was the Wright State Raiders that were able to work their way all the way back into the game and achieve a tight 1-point victory to move to the next round. And so we see the second double-digit seed moving forward to the next round in Wright State. They await their next opponent, which will be either the Roos of Kansas City or the Colorado Buffaloes. And it is the Buffaloes that will move on. They took a healthy lead and were able to maintain that lead all the way to an 11-point victory. And here we have a look at the quarterfinals and of all 8 teams remaining. Will the top teams be able to continue to dominate and move into the next round, or will we have some upsets on our hands? Well, there's only one way to find out. We will start at the top, North Carolina versus Western Kentucky. And it is the Tar Heels that are able to take down the Hilltoppers. They took the lead early and were able to maintain that lead all the way to a 19-point victory to move to the regional semifinals. Up next, we're going to see if the Terriers from Wofford can continue their run as they face the Braves from the University of Bradley. And it is the Terriers of Wofford that get a mighty victory up against Bradley. They took a healthy lead early and walked all the way into a great victory to move them into the regional semifinals. So one semifinal is complete with a 12 seed in there as Wofford make it to the semifinals. On the bottom of our bracket, we will have the Owls from Florida Atlantic up against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And it is the Golden Gophers that get a victory here. They took the lead early and were leading at half. And even though Florida Atlantic tried to push at the beginning of the second half, it was the Golden Gophers that were able to maintain the victory all the way through and get a big win to move themselves into the regional semifinals. With Minnesota advancing, we now are waiting on our last quarterfinal between the Wright State Raiders and the Colorado Buffaloes. And it is the Buffaloes of Colorado that get the victory over Wright State. A very commanding day as they take the lead early and were able to maintain that all the way until the final buzzer with a massive 36-point victory. And so we see the regional semifinals set up and ready to go. Will we see the top powerhouse teams making their way into the finals, or do we have another upset on our hands on either side of the bracket? But there's one way to find out by seeing North Carolina take on the number 12 seed Wofford Terriers. And we do see the Tar Heels able to continue their run by having a good, strong outing against the Wofford Terriers. A great run by this team to make it this far, but unfortunately the Tar Heels were too much as the North Carolina Tar Heels move on to the next round. So with the Tar Heels onto the regional finals, who will play them in that final? Will it be the Golden Gophers from Minnesota or the Colorado Buffaloes? And it is the Buffaloes that move on to the next round. Tight game back and forth in the first half. Then Colorado was able to maintain and gain a lead in the second half, pushing all the way to the victory to move on to the regional finals. And as you can see, we have both number 1 and 2 seeds here at the regional finals. This is the first time we've had the 1 and 2 seed here at the regional finals. And it's going to be a good one. 2 big teams, the North Carolina Tar Heels versus the Colorado Buffaloes. Let's see who is our winner. And it is the North Carolina Tar Heels that get the victory. A back and forth game, back and forth in the first half, with UNC having a small lead at the first half. Then they were able to pick it up and build that lead and march that lead forward on their way to a victory in the regional finals. And there we have it. Our winners of our Southeast region is the #1 seed, North Carolina Tar Heels. A great round here in this region. And taking a look at the big picture, we are a quarter of the way through every region, and we have now our second #1 seed moving on. As you see, North Carolina added to the list of the top 16 finalists in this tournament. Thank you so much for watching. We will then be moving into the South region, being hosted in Birmingham, Alabama. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Comment down below your thoughts, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.